influenced by the deep state, fighting for independence, thinking about revolution, looking for alternative solutions. The enemies of the deep state will tell you what others even don't dare to think. Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski.
Hello. This is the podcast, DieGutenMenschen, Public Enemies of the Deep State. Today in a visual way, I think we modernized a little bit. My name is Manuel Ochsenreiter. I am editor-in-chief of Germany's #1 news magazine Zuerst. And I speak as usual and always, and thank God, to my friend and colleague Mateusz Piskorski from Poland. Hello, Mateusz. How are you?
Hello. Good to see you again.
I think maybe it's a custom that we say now, oh, you look great. You look great.
Yes, of course. You look great too.
You know, this first small talk, like, oh, what did you do with your skin? How did you do that? How did you know?
That's very interesting, particularly in those times.
Yes.
Where we meet online only, yes.
When we start with our geopolitical beauty block, it will be for sure a topic, which
it will be soon on, yeah? I hope so.
Which volcano ash we put on our face that we look so great, so young and so handsome. But we have today a very serious topic. Beside all the jokes, when we start, we have a very serious topic. Everybody in Europe right now is talking about terrorism and about terror strikes and about violence, especially about Islamist terrorism. I think, again, in Poland, not so much happened, right? I think there is, you don't have so many options.
Some people were detained several years ago for supposed preparing of the terrorist attacks. But they were let free because no one is interested in any kind of terrorist attacks here. Yes, so we are quite safe.
If I believe in one thing, and the connoisseur will understand, then it is that Poland is always fighting terrorism.
Yes, of course. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, right?
And
you're totally right. Yes.
Everywhere. So, but what do you make out of this? Why? I mean, we had always these kinds of terror strikes, and if we remember, many years back, we had terror strikes in Madrid. We had strikes, I think, in London, also in Paris. What we witness right now is like a wave through European cities. And it is indeed more or less, also Vienna was just some days ago. But what we witness now is some kind of low-tech terrorism, I would call it. So this is not anymore with a sophisticated bomb in some metro system or something like this. What we see are, first and foremost, people stabbing, beheading other people. What we see are people like in what we saw in Vienna with assault rifles running through the street and, well, it seems like more or less randomly shooting. What do you make out of all that? Is that, I mean, I read in the internet some conspiracy theories, and I call it conspiracy theories, that this is some kind of false flag. Because to establish much more the Corona dictatorship, what we have, but I don't believe that. I think we have these people among us who are ready to do so, and I think that if it starts somewhere, indeed, that the barrier for the next ones to commit the same or something else is far lower. That they also want to follow. Nevertheless, and for most, we shouldn't forget that also they can feel some, well, kind of weird support by guys like the Turkish president Erdogan, who seems to put fuel into all that as well. To the reaction of Macron, mainly Macron, who announced as reaction on the terror attacks to ban and forbid the organization of grey wolves. So how do you see it? Do you think we have now really this very new quality of violence, or is it just now the timing that all these things seem to happen within a very, very short time, what gives us the impression that we live in some sort of times of a pre-civil war or so.
Well, although we agree on most issues, and I guess we will agree in this podcast as well, let me be devil's advocate for a while. I mean, first, I really don't see any mass scale of the things we are talking about. I don't know, but if we would make prepare some statistics about people which are being stabbed with knives every day in all European countries, yes, and compare it to the number of the so-called terrorists which have committed their crimes in the last weeks, we would see that the so-called terrorist killings are, I don't know, maybe 1% or even less of all such things, such murders and crimes which are happening every day on the streets of Europe. Yes, that's the first point. The
But you
second
might be
point,
surprised. I see it the same way, by the way. But please go
yeah,
on.
the second point, we are very, let's say, Europe-centric. Yes, because every day in terrorist attacks, because of the policy of the so-called West, hundreds of people die in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria before, yes, so outside Europe. Here in Europe, if even one person dies,
Sorry, we had at the same time a bomb attack, I think, in the University of Kabul in
yeah,
Pakistan.
right,
Nobody knows in Europe, and nobody
and
talks about this. Yeah,
and
you're right.
of course, and a lot of more victims than in the European cities, yes, where you have single victims. That's the second thing. Third thing is that, of course, if you have mentioned some, let's say, conspiracy theorists, but on the other hand, if you think about that, and if you read, for instance, the arguments of people like Alain Soral in France and his followers there, for instance, yes, yes, they are claiming that it's all somehow controlled. They are not talking that it's inspired, but that it's somehow controlled by the special services, secret services in France, for instance, and in other countries. Everyone says it's a conspiracy theory. On the one hand, those mainstream guys, journalists, politicians who claim this is a 100% conspiracy theory, they themselves claimed a few years ago that, for instance, several terrorist attacks in Russia were committed by the FSB, so by the secret political police, secret police in Russian Federation. Yes, so they were state inspired, according to them. These are the same people, so we have again double standards. Yes, here, typical picture of double standards. Anyway, I really think that what we have to stress now when it comes to all those latest terrorist attacks, as they call it, is that it's not a kind of typical terrorism, yes, because terrorism is somehow defined. What is terrorism, by the way, from the point of view of theory? Yes, the terrorists have demands, yeah? Political demands, other demands, yes, and this is just like, you know, a kind of blind violence organized by people who are, of course, they might be religiously, politically motivated, yes, we cannot exclude that, but on the other hand, I perceive it as a kind of blind frustration of some people there, yeah, who are in this way trying to get rid of that frustration, to kill everyone around, and to kill themselves also very often, yes, because very often it ends with suicide as well, yes. So this is not a typical terrorism, I'm sure. As we see, I mean, we have a lot of theories now about the latest attacks in different countries, but you can see probably that, as far as I know, there's no organization which admitted that it's in charge of those attacks for the moment. Yes.
Oh,
So
didn't we have in Vienna some weird Islamic State publication, which
yes, exactly. I mean, of some young Albanians who are there, yes, and who claim they are somehow connected to Islamic States, because actually it was committed not by immigrants from outside Europe, but by the Albanians, probably from Kosovo, by the way. Yes. So anyway, this is not a typical terrorism, yes, because I mean, you as a German perfectly remember the political terrorism of Rote Armee faction or other terrorist groups, which had their political demands. Yeah. All the other things, I'm not so sure that we may classify it from the theoretical point of view as terrorism. Maybe it would be better to define it as religiously motivated or politically motivated violence. Yes, not terrorism as such. This is also quite important, because I think we should really very clearly define the things we are talking about. Yes. Nevertheless, of course, in the media it will be always called, like, terrorist attacks and so on. Even if a mad guy will shoot some people and let's say twice Allah Akbar, yes, then he will be called a terrorist. Yes.
yeah,
So
I mean, we should simply speak out at this point that we use today terms like terrorism, but also other terms, I don't know, like fascism and so on, not in the political scientific way. It is more used to stigmatize and
of course, yes. Uh-huh.
of course, I totally agree. The conspiracy theory statement from me was more directed against those who's what I also was reading, that it is somehow connected with the Corona crisis and lockdown. That is what I don't see. What I see, and where I am totally on your side, is that when we look back to the real successful big actions of Islamist terrorists in Europe, may it be Madrid, may it be London, that it always was conducted and executed by people who were either very, very, very well known by the services. What came after that out, this is now no conspiracy theory. This came out in investigations and in committees and the parliaments later on. Or they were even working, yes, you see who's coming here, or they were even working as informants for the services. So that is a thing we can say for sure. And we know today already that, for example, I think the Vienna guy was also known, and there were, I think, even warnings from the Slovakian secret service and Slovakian structures to Austria. So the people are all. They didn't come out of the nothing. We have the same. I mean, I'm sure you remember the terror strike with the truck in Berlin at the Christmas market. Amri, I forgot the name, but this guy was also not an unknown guy, so they knew very well. So if I understood you right, we speak then we. Of course, the services say later on, "Oh, we don't know how this could happen. We didn't expect them," but we could say, "Well, this is maybe a calculated violence, which could happen under the eyes of these structures." I mean, there is no other way to describe it. But I wanted to say something else. If we look at Europe today, by the way, my first idea when it came to Austria, to Vienna, was not a guy from the Balkans. My first idea was a Chechen. That is a guy from Chechnya. So we have in Austria, don't nail me on this number, but I think we have around 40,000 Chechens living in Austria. They have in their hands I mean, what is much, much worse than what they call today terrorism, they have in their hands the whole organized crime there. These are people, they came to Austria as so-called Russian refugees and Russian asylum seekers after the two Chechnyan wars. We have in Germany, especially since 2015, hundreds of thousands, maybe more than a million or 2 million, the numbers are different, of people we simply don't know where these people are from and who they are. We have in France one French city after the other taken over by the French post-colonial masses. I mean, if we take all this into consideration, we have Sweden today full with people from Ethiopia, for example, also, and and Somalia. Um, Taking all this in consideration, we should make a podcast where we celebrate and also wonder and a little bit puzzled that not more is happening than these things which are happening. So we basically, we are not speaking about some guys running around with a knife. We speak about decades of totally wrong European politics. And I'm not now speaking about the migration politics. I also speak about the constant destabilization of literally all border regions of Europe. Let us look today. What are we doing? In Belarus, we are destabilizing. Ukraine was destabilized. What was done in Georgia, what was done during the Chechenian wars, there also was Europe and the US playing a role. So also this is a border region to Europe. If we look what happened to Middle East and North Africa due to the so-called Arab Spring, also destabilization. So that is a master mistake, or maybe the leaders would not see it as a mistake. But here we have to start to discuss, and we have to end the debate when it comes to the borders and if the borders are open or not open. But
Well,
was waking up by us basically. So maybe this is a less Eurocentric view now on these things.
well, there, of course, I agree with you. We have the geopolitical context, and when you mentioned the main reason of all the problems, immigration and the sources of immigration, which are namely the destabilization of Middle East, of Eastern post-Soviet countries, some of them, of Northern Africa, as in Libya, yes. So, who is the author of that, of this strategy? United States, of course, yes.
Of
So I
course,
always
because they integrate the benefit, which is of course in resources, that is also in chaos. Everything is cheaper. Also when it comes to their meddling, they have the benefit and they outsource all risks to Europe, of course. And
so I'm always comparing it to the situation. I mean, what should we do if the Americans do what they do there near Europe, on the frontiers of Europe?
arms to
So,
the Mexicans. I'm joking.
no, no, we should go there and try to destabilize Mexico, for instance, which is already destabilized. Then we should crush the parts of the wall which has been already built by Trump administration, open the border with Mexico, and they would experience the same thing we experience here in Europe. Yes, probably there.
And fuel the separatism in California, where we were talking already about here.
Yes, of course. But well, to be honest, we should also think about the solutions. Yes, and now we have a very interesting dilemma when it comes to the solution, because almost everyone agrees that we should somehow close, yes, or limit the immigration. I mean, almost anyone who is reasonable,
Yeah,
more or less. Yes, I'm not talking about the ideologists of open borders and so on. Nevertheless, how should we close? The question is, should we close the borders within the national states of Europe, or should we perhaps strengthen Frontex agency and create a common European border policy? This is a dilemma, I think, for the moment being, because you see, after those attacks, which were, well, let's say, acts of violence, not terrorism, but anyway, after all those attacks, people, even the politicians from the mainstream, are starting to debate the, let's say, ways to limit the immigration as such. Yes, this is one of the results of all those tragedies which has happened lately in Europe as well. Yes, so Now this is the question, I think. Yeah, should we close the national borders, or should we use Frontex, strengthen Frontex, and build something like Festung Europa, as you would say in Germany? Yeah?
So good that you talk to a German who has simply for every technical problem a solution, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yes, this is a question. Too.
but I mean, there are solutions which cannot be to build a fence, and the solution cannot be to build a wall. It is can maybe be part of a solution for a certain period to stop right now the influx, but that will not solve any problem. The major point is the first thing what it needs is the political will of those who can bring a solution, and that is what I don't see right now. They express, I mean, it's ridiculous these comments they give. It's also, I mean, not that I am the biggest fan of the gray wolves, yeah, that should know everyone, but it's ridiculous to react on these crimes happening in France with banning the gray wolves. That is, you know what I mean. It is simply, well, I would go so far to say stupid, but I mean, I think I know why Macron is doing this, because by banning the gray wolves, he is getting now the applause and the standing ovations from those people who really want to change. So the major problem of us, and with us, I mean, maybe you don't count yourself to us in that context, but I say the anti-system right in Europe is that it is ridiculously easy to distract us with something, ridiculously easy. That means when in Germany now some Christian democratic politician says, oh yes guys, oh, we have to do something against this Islamic extremism, I will close 2 mosques, then everyone is like a reflex, clapping hands, but nothing will change. It will not change anything. The major point is that every true solution we can bring, and I mean it literally, every kind of solution will automatically harm the relations of Europe, of the European Union, of the European countries to the United States of America. That starts with deportation. Of course, I mean, I know this is always a topic where people are afraid to talk about, but Germany has to, if we want to get normality again and to get normal security and safety and normal development, we have to deport masses of people. But right now, of course, the problem is where to deport them. That means, for example, if we deport Syrian refugees back to Syria, that means we need normal and ordinary relations with the legal Syrian government of President Bashar al-Assad. We have to reopen our embassies. We have to go in a very, very close diplomatic contact. We have to support the Syrian government in fight of terrorism, of course. That would be the automatic, not the consequence, this is the condition to solve the problem with the deportation. Just that is one
Of
example.
course.
It would automatically mean that we have to go with all border regions into relations which support their stability. Since it is an interest of the United States to create instability, we will automatically become opponents of them. And that is a point where I say that even a huge part, I mean, I fantasize now around, but I mean, oh, no, we saw this in Austria and in Italy. We had governments with participation of, well, the system critical right, to say it like this. But there we have big parts which are not ready to go into this step, to go into an open conflict with the United States. For Germany, it would automatically mean that a German chancellor or a German foreign minister, at least, or at least maybe the German ambassador in Washington, would go every week to the White House and say, okay, guys, when are you taking your troops back? Because we don't need you here. You are just causing trouble. Don't forget that the African command center is located in Germany. All
Yeah.
the whole US operations in North Africa were operated not from Washington or somewhere there. They were operated from German soil. And that is a huge problem. So that would be our job to do, but we are light years away from realizing this. And something else, just as a last sentence, what we should think about. There was an attack taking place in France. Islamist was, I think, killing in a church with a knife 3 people and was injuring many others. Do you know how this person came to Europe? Do you know the story behind it? It's very interesting.
Probably from Tunisia, yes?
He was Tunisian, yes. He came
Yeah,
via Libya with a boat to Italy, and from there he managed to go to France.
yeah,
Um, whole Europe is until today supporting in Libya the government of national accord, which is located in Tripolis, which has a Ministry of Inner Affairs with an inner minister, Fatih Bashar, who is, and that is not what I am saying, this is what is saying the US Embassy in Tripolis, this is what is saying, I mean, even all these organizations we are usually not quoting, like the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights in London. So from our geopolitical allies to even to the geopolitical enemies are all the same opinion that this man and this ministry is conducting human trafficking on a very high level. And it is estimated that already almost 2,000 Islamist fighters, a lot of them came from Syria. We know that with Turkey's help, fighters, mercenaries, Islamists, people who were even IS affiliated, came from Syria to Libya, especially from Idlib region to Libya, to fight there on the side of the GNA government. Again, what is our own ally. And the GNA government is responsible for protecting the Libyan coast with the Libyan Coast Guard. But all these organizations are so corrupt, so criminal that they make it possible. So, but of course, the GNA government is the lapdog of the United States on the one side and of Turkey in the other side. So we would never ever dare to be there too strict, while their enemy, General Haftar from the LNA, from the Libyan National Army, is fighting Islamists and fighting terrorists. The guy, our mainstream politics and our mainstream media is always stigmatizing as the guy who is sent by Russia and like a terrorist himself. But I mean, the major point, and I'm now finished. Don't worry, also the audience. I'm now finishing my sentence. The main problem is that the European Union and the European states are generally fighting those people who are beneficial to us and who would be our allies in future, for example, and protecting and supporting those people who are totally violent towards us and who are like hazarders of our interests. Just as a last example, I mean, we had now the anniversary of the assassination of General Soleimani, which was conducted by the Americans. But I tell you, General Soleimani killed more IS terrorists than all the European structures and armies did together. And that should make us think.
yeah. Well, I agree, of course. We should ask everyone a kind of rhetoric question about the number of immigrants or the so-called refugees even coming to Europe from Libya during the times of Colonel Gaddafi, so before 2011, yes? There
That's a
were
good
no immigrants coming from Libya at that time. I mean, all the immigration. I'm even
point.
talking about the Gastarbeiter, let's say, coming from all over Africa, were coming to work in Libya, not in Europe at that time, yes? You remember.
Yes.
Then you have Syria, of course. Even to check the people coming within this wave of immigration from Syria, even to make Europeans more safe, if we let them in, we should have and establish contacts. I mean, the European governments and security services should establish strong contacts and cooperation with the Syrian government, with the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad, and with the Syrian special secret service. Just get the information about the people who are coming to Europe.
Mhm.
Yes, right. So, of course, I totally agree with you that this, I mean, I was talking about the borders, about closing the borders and so on the national level or on European level. But of course, we should, I totally agree with you that we should really find the roots. And I think that we have pointed out that the roots of the problem, the sources of the problem is the destabilization of the region of North Africa and Middle East by the US, actually, with the help, of course, unfortunately, with the help of their European partners, yes, of several Western European countries. To solve the problem as such, we should really support the existing governmental structures, the strong governmental structures in the region, in the Mediterranean. And of course, we shouldn't care about the so-called democratic or liberal democratic standards. We should support the governments which have real support and which are capable of getting the things there and the state functioning
And if
there.
we if we learned one thing in the last days is that even the United States of America are not caring about the liberal democratic
Of
standards
course,
when it comes to themselves and
of
to elections.
course. I think, I think that the problem of Europe, at least some part of Europe, is that it's still taking seriously the declarations of American Democrats about fighting for freedom and democracy everywhere. Yes, we should stop take it seriously. We should analyze the reality, the political reality, the cultural reality all around, and that could be the way to fight the problem, fight the problem with immigration and with the so-called terrorism or violence or just violence in its sources there in North Africa and Middle East. So it should be quite obvious. I mean, things which we are discussing now, yes, are so simple, seem to be so simple and obvious that it's really something shocking that the mainstream of European politicians are afraid to talk about that, to talk about the simple solutions which seem to be the only solutions available now.
Yes, and my idea or my opinion about this is that, as I said, that literally every level of what we are discussing there is bringing us automatically in opposition to the United States of America. I think that is the real reason why we have this kind of fear, this kind of silence also about the topics. I mean, listen to these speeches. They almost copy paste the speech of President Bush after 9/11. Oh, these people are not attacking us as people; they are attacking our way of life, and all this bullshit are they saying? They are not giving one little hint towards the solution. And of course, there will come here and there some conservative politician who will say, yes, we have to do some deportations and so on. And then, as I said, a big number of those who are already on the right way to see the real solution will stop and clap hands because they hear deportation, that yes, that is what we need. But that means nothing else than we are sitting in a boat with a lot of holes in it, and instead of closing the holes, we are asking for one or two more buckets. That is simply what we are doing, more or less. Or we cannot close the holes. We have so many buckets in our hands, and I think the real reason is that until today nobody really wants to go into a full opposition. And of course it would cause us trouble. Of course, the United States wouldn't accept that. And if let us just spin around for 1 second, imagine one European country, maybe a small one. Oh no, a small one wouldn't have the guts. Let it be Germany or France would eventually in Syria get into normal diplomatic relations. You know what would happen from Washington. Or imagine a European country, may it be again Germany or France, would eventually change the support in Libya from Sarraj, from the GNA government, to the LNA in Tobruk, to General Haftar, you know what would happen. But I think compared to the long-term risk and to the long-term losses we will suffer, I think we would stand such a few months diplomatic struggle with the United States. I mean, I don't see the big danger. They won't bombard us. Maybe other Germans said that again already, but you know what I mean. But you need people who have the guts to do so, and this is what I don't see right now in Europe.
You know, perhaps they will feel more independent in the coming months because of the internal crisis in the United States, which is very simple to predict. Yes, so perhaps United States will be too busy with solving its own internal problems to push to press the European politicians. So that might be a short period when the Europeans could really think about their own solutions.
I hear the sound of victory. I hear the sound of victory. I always wanted to say this. I hear the African angels coming.
Yeah. But that's the topic for our next discussion, I think, after we will hear who is officially the president of the United States. Yes.
Yeah, but you know, I saw you know what I thought when I saw this on YouTube. I mean, I had to watch it 3 times or so. Said these people say they won the world war against us. Wow. I mean, what is that theater? Well, but still, you're right. So that was, by the way, my since we were discussing it in our last podcast. This I hope I express. You know, I felt after the podcast a little bit guilty, because, even because I was worried that I didn't empathize enough. That I am not pro-Trump because I think that Trump is the greatest of all, but I think that Trump has the biggest potential for creating some irritations in Washington, and every irritation in Washington is good for the recovering of Europe. That is what I think, and I thought that Trump is a kind of guarantee for this. So I don't know how it will go on, but I think maybe maybe Joe Biden has also this talent to irritate a bit. I hope so.
I think so, at least concerning the fact that he will not be able to differentiate and to identify if he's a president or a senator, yeah, you know, because he doesn't feel the difference at the meetings. Yes. Oh, he will definitely irritate some people. So the next president will be Kamala Harris. We should also discuss this woman in one of our podcasts and her career. Yes.
I don't know, is it permitted to criticize her, or are we then getting deplatformed by YouTube? That is an important question.
Well, don't ask this question publicly because we risk it a lot.
It was just irony. It was a joke. It was a joke.
Of course, of course.
YouTube is the biggest protector of freedom of speech,
Yes. We have freedom of speech here.
and we are YouTube's loyal servants.
Of course.
I hear the sound of victory. I mean,
Yes.
as long YouTube is bringing that, why shouldn't they bringing us? So I mean, after after that, everything is possible.
Let's hope so.
Shouldn't we invite one day also one of these televangelists? How are they called?
Uh, wow. TV preachers.
TV preacher. I think we should invite one day a TV preacher who is talking to us in tongues.
Yes. Who is explaining us the mentality of United States and its people?
Tongues. In tongues. I totally insist. It was a pleasure to talk to you again. By the way, we would be very
You, of
thankful.
course.
You know that I stand before such a podcast 2 hours in the bathroom? Really? 2 hours? It is now much more work to make a podcast with you than it was before, where I could go see my jumpsuit.
Yes, so much preparations, of course, but we'll try not to disappoint our not only listeners but viewers already. Yes, and the next one should be also in the video format, I think.
Of course. We can ask our listeners. Maybe they will. They can leave a comment if they like this kind of format, or I can also, I mean,
But please do not comment our faces.
it's
Okay.
I mean, if someone is annoyed watching us 45 minutes talking, I cannot be really angry with this person also. Yeah, but leave the comment. And we would be very grateful, and we see each other soon. We are very curious what now will happen in Washington. We are also curious what will happen in Europe in the next days, since the terror wave we were talking today doesn't seem to stop. What doesn't mean that we expect this. Hopefully it stopped, but we don't know. So it looks everything very interesting.
We'll follow the events.
That is what we do. See you soon.
See you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
This program was presented to you by Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski, the hottest dissident who won't violate any time the global rules against racism, extremism, or any other bad isms.